This is Gemara, Baba Metziah, Daf Ches, and we're holding on the bottom of Zayin Amid Beis, in the middle of the discussion of Shnayim Oichazin, which turned into Shnayim Adukin, which turned into Shnayim Adukin in the Ishtar, and we taught us Rav Elazar, Zen Noitel, Zen Noitel Makav Shedem Magas was a mid-step, but we're up to the point of the Toifes and the Tairif. What exactly is going to be the din when each one is holding or different parts? Let's remind ourselves the Tairif. We said we could remember this from the word Taira. The Tairif is the ikar of the shtar, the main parts of the document containing the name of the lender, the name of the borrower, as well as the date and the amount of money, etc. So Rav Elazar taught us Machlekes is when they're both holding the taifes, so they're both holding the tairef. But if one is holding the taifes and one is holding the tairef, each one takes that which you're holding. And Rav Yechlin said, La'ilam cholkim. So we pick it up. We're about 8 lines from the wide lines on Zayin Amid Beis. First line is Mai Chazis, Amr Le Rav Achmed Difti Le Ravina. So Rav Achmed Difti says to Ravina, Le Rav Elazar. According to Rav Elazar, the Amar that says that Noitel Tev is the Noitel Teiref, each one takes the part of the shtar that they're holding. Lamali, what can you do with a piece of a shtar? We think right now what that means is you cut up the shtar. This one takes the part with the names. This one takes the other parts of the shtar. Ask the Gemara, what? Do you need a piece of paper to wrap on top of your bottle? What is the point of splitting up the document in such a manner? So Amar Lei. So Ravina responds, Lidmi, it doesn't mean you actually split up the document by cutting it up. It means the value of the document, meaning the typeface has a value and a tairif is a value. Damar hachi shtara. This type of shtar, de'isbeizman kameshave. If it has a zman, how much is it worth? Udelesbeizman kameshave. And if it doesn't have a zman, how much it is worth? So we figure out the value of the shtar based on if it did or did not have a zman. And it explains the Gemara what's the intrinsic difference. The shtar dismei zman gavami mishabdi. A shtar with a zman you could collect from the chasim mishubadim encumbered properties. Vedach like gavami mishabdi, you are not, and therefore yov leheich debeni ubeni. The other one gives the difference. So basically, the Gemara is explaining that, guess what? There is a value to the taifes, there is a value to the tairef, and that value is figured out by figuring out what's a shtar with a zman worth, what's a shtar without a zman worth, etc. Says the Gemara, and similarly, v'achloiku nami da'amara, and when we say achloiku as well, it means lidmi, it means according to the value. Now the Gemara proves this in the first very wide line, 2 lines to the end of the Amud. If you're not going to say this, go back in our Mishnah. 2 people are holding the talis. Achanami depalgi. Here also, are you going to tell me that you cut the talis in half? You're going to ruin the talis. So says the Gemara, you know what the Mishnah must have meant already? When the Mishnah said Yachleiku, didn't mean take out a scissor and cut the talis, cut the garment in half, because you're going to ruin it. Rather, what does it mean? It must mean that you split it in the value, like Ravina, is answering to Rav Acha. Answers the Gemara, ha loy kasha. If you want to prove it from the Mishnah, there is no proof. Why is there no proof from the Mishnah? Says the Gemara, says the Gemara, no. Really, I'll tell you, guess what? They did actually cut the talis in half. What usage is it? It's chazi l'ketanim. It's chazi for children. It can mean it's chazi as a small garment. You know, you take a larger piece of material, you get a smaller scarf, or it just means that now it's fit for a kid. Says the Gemara, 1 second, the top line of Ches Amid Aleph. V'hadamar Rava, that which Rava said. Im ha'isa talis musheves cholkin. If it's a golden talis, you split it up. Achanami depalgi la. Are you going to tell me you cut it up You just told me there's no right from the Mishnah because you can cut it up and chazi likitanim, but a golden talis of Sadua, but you're going to lose it. You're going to ruin it. Says Gemara, no, Aloi Kasha the Chazia, Libinei Malachim, to the children of Malachim, smaller garment. Ask Gemara further. Now the Gemara brings a right. That which we learned in the end of our Mishnah. Two people are riding. And we said in the Mishnah, what's the din yachlaiku achnami de polygala? Here also you can tell me that they cut the animal in half. Hav sadua. What do you mean? But you're going to lose it. It's going to ruin the animal. So b'ishlamat ahira. I understand if you're going to tell me it's a tar animal, chazil basar. No, each one gets half the animal, half the meat to eat. Elo tamei hav sadua. Elo lidmi hachanami lidmi. So the Mishnah must have meant that you split it up in the value. So to here, you split it up in the value. That's what Rav Shimon is teaching us, that it's all a din in the value. And that really finishes up the end of yesterday's shir, the end of the dinim of Yachlaiku. When it comes to shtar, taifes, tairef, etc. Continues the Gemara. Amar Rami Bar Chama. About 10 lines down, first line is Chama Zoisei Meres. This that we learned. Ha Magbia Metziah lechaveiroi kana chaveri. Says Rami Bar Chama, you know what we can learn from the Mishnah? Now, where exactly we learn it from the Mishnah, we're going to have to wait a few moments. Rashi keys us in a little bit on the top line and says the Mishnah that says two people that pick up a Metziah, they acquire it and they split it. It must be, Rashi says, that they're picking it up some point for the other guy. And then Rashi says, which case in the Mishnah is this talking about, we're going to have to see. But says Rabbi Bar Chama, let's get the din. Where he learned it out from will come clear in a moment. Says Rabbi Bar Chama, a tremendous yisaid, that an idea that we really see all over Shas. I find an object on the floor, and I'm like, hey, my good friend Reuven would love this object. So I pick it up for him. What's the din? Kana chaverai, he is kaina. And now the Gemara explains, these are like kana chaverai. Because if you're going to tell me that the other guy is not kaina, tiyasazu, then the case of the Mishnah should be comparable. That when two people are holding an item, each one, they're holding this item together. So if I can't pick it up for you and you cannot pick it up for me, so in relation, when I'm holding my end of the talis, if I can't pick it up for you, that means you're inconsequential. That means your side of the talis should be as if, kimi, it's lying on the ground. V'zu, and for the other guy, and neither person should have a kinyan in the Mishnah. Rather, what must we learn from the fact that there is a kinyan of each one of the Mishnah? That you indeed have a kinyan, each one for his friend. Says the Gemara, Amar Rava. Really, I'm going to argue in time. Says Rava, no, I argue in your own Rachama. In the case of a Metziah, you cannot pick up the item for your friend. You know, I hear you could in the Mishnah. Because it's a different mechanics. It's not just that I'm picking up an item for you. In the Mishnah, I'm picking up an item for myself. So if I'm on my own Emzaicha, says Rava, Migu. Now, how exactly does Migu work, and what exactly is the mechanics of Lumdis? Is obviously large discussions over here. But says Rava, no. Once you're Zaicha, once you're Koina for yourself, then you could be Koina for your friend. But if you're not to be Koina for yourself, and you purely and solely want to pick it up for your friend, then that would not work. And says Rava Teida, I'll prove to you what I'm saying is correct. If you were to tell your friend, you were to tell a messenger, say V'ganav li, go and steal from me V'ganav, then obviously Potter. Why are you Potter? Because we say Ein shliach l'dvar aveira. Why are you stealing? Why are you violating God's word? I told you, so listen to Hashem. Don't listen to me. But yet we find V'shotvin shen gamvu, if partners steal an object, chayavin, then they're both obligated. My taima. What's the reason? If I cannot pick up for you and you cannot pick up for me, so if we pick up together, each one of us didn't fully pick up the item. Rather, says Rava, what simply must be the reason? My taima la mishum darmina, it must be that we say migu de zach lenavshei, zachinami lechavrei, shema mina, says Rava, that is a conclusive proof that each one can indeed pick up for the other one, but when? Only when you are zeicha for yourself. Rami Bar Chama went all the way and said, I can pick up something solely for you. Says Rava, that's too far. Says Rava, if I steal for you, doesn't work. Why? We don't say that there's shlichus in such a case. But yet, if we steal together, it does work. What must the reason, says Rava? Must be because Mika Zachlan Avshei. Zachanami le chavrei. Continues Rava, now that he's brought out this idea, this migu, Amar Rava. Hashta Damar, now that we said, Amrina migu. Now that I told you this new klal, that migu, that since you're kind of for yourself, you can be kind of your friend. Cheiresh ubikeashek be a Metziah. A cheiresh, a deaf mute, in halacha is assumed not to have das. And a pikeach, a regular healthy person, picks up an item together. Mitoich shekana cheiresh, kana bikeach. Says the Braisa, since the cheiresh is kaina, therefore the pikeach is kaina. Says the Gemara, 1 second. Bishlama cheirish kana. I understand that the cheirish is kaina. Why? Tkamagvilei ben das. Why is the cheirish kana? Again, on one side we have a healthy person. On one side we have a person with no das. So says Rava, I understand why the guy without das is kaina, because on the other side we have someone with das picking it up for him. Alapikeach b'mai kana. But how could it be that the pikeach is kaina if the cheirish has no das? Elaima, rather, what should we say? Cheirish kana pikeach like kana. Rather, what should we say? We should really say that the cheirish only is kaina and not the pikeach, the competent smart person. Umay migu. Now, if this was true, then what is going on with the migu? There's no migu in this case. Says the Gemara, migu dishnei chershin. No, the migu is for a different base. Ba'alma kanu. Hi nami kani. If two deaf mutes pick up an item together, the chiddush is that they would be kaina. So too, in this case, they would be kaina. Says the Gemara, what raya in the world is this? Hi my. 6 lines in the white lines. If you're going to tell me that I can pick up something for you, but when can I pick it up for you? When I pick it up for you. When I pick it up with das for you. But this guy, he did not pick it up for his friend. He picked it up for himself. So if he himself, the pikech, is not kaina, lachrini magni, but you're going to tell me he can pick it up for someone else? Ella, says the Gemara, that would make no sense. It can't be that the pikech is not kaina, because he's not picking up the cheirish is kaina. Ella, ema mitaysh lekana pikech lekana cheirish. Says the Gemara, no, so you know what it must be? It must be in this case, again, we have a pikech and a cheirish, a guy with das and a guy without das, picking up a Metziah. Must be because the pikech can't be kaina. Why can the pikech not be kaina? Because the cheirish is not kaina. Therefore, by domino effect, the cheirish isn't kaina either. V'chi on the first white line, and if you're going to suggest ma'ishna mishnei cheirish and alma, I don't understand. But we proved from the fact that two cherishin, two people without das can make a kin one for another. Says the Gemara, no proof. Hasam tekinu le Rabbanan. Over there, it's a special din de Rabbanan that they have a kinyan. Why? Lo asli lan suye. We don't want it to come to fighting. We don't want that if the Cherish is told that they can't make a kinyan, they're going to go start fighting. But in this case, there's no fight. Because what's going to happen? The Cherish is going to be upset he didn't have a kinyan. Guess what? Even the Bikech didn't have a kinyan. And because there's no reason for such a kinyan, therefore there's no din d'Rabbanan, and therefore there would indeed be no kinyan in this case. And therefore, by extension, the Gemara thought that we had a raya. Again, let's just follow where we're holding over here. This was Rava saying, Hashta da Amri Amrina Migu Cheresh Ubikech Shekbia Metziah. We should say that one's kind of the other one's kind of the Gemara is saying that in this case we would not be able to apply the Migu. Continues the Gemara, really now going a little bit backwards. Amar le on the second white line of Chesam Aleph. Amar le Ravacha Brei de Ravada le Ravashi. Tiuka de Rami Bar Chama Mehech. Rami Bar Chama began today, the second part of today, the top of the Amid, the Magbiyah Metziah the Chaveiroi, Kana Chaveiroi, and he said he learned it from our Mishnah. Says Ravacha Brei de Ravada. Where exactly in the Mishnah did he see this din? If you can tell me, learn from the first case. Each was saying that it's mine, and I picked it up all for myself. So where's the case of so pick it up for the friend? Elamei must be the case that says Amar Kula Shali, Amar Kula Shali, Hasulamali. So what must be from the extra case in the Mishnah? Again, we touched upon this when we read the Mishnah, but now we have clarity, says the Gemara, for the fact that the Mishnah said two cases. Number one is Amar Kulishli, is Ani Mitzazia. Number two is Amar Kulishli. Why do we do this special case? Kana Chaveiroi. So in the actual case of the Mishnah, says the Gemara, 1 second. No, we already dealt with this. We already explained that Reisha b'Metziah, b'Seif of Mekach Memkar. We already explained that the extra case in the Mishnah is coming to teach us a Chiddush, not only when I find it, but even when I buy something. So how can you tell me now that it's teaching me the Chiddush of Metziah Chaveiroi? Says, well, you're right, Elami Seifa. Must be from which part of the Mishnah? From the end of the Mishnah. That said what? Why do we need this case? It's really just an application of the first case in the Mishnah. What must be the reason? Says the Gemara again. 10 lines from the bottom, first line is b'Metziah. How do you know this case is talking about Metziah at all? Maybe it's talking about buying and selling. And if you're going to ask, okay, then what's the Chiddush of Mekach Memkar? I'll explain to you. It's you know what it is. I would have thought, that which he said, it's Chetzer Shali. Meaning, one guy said kulishli, the other guy responded chetzishli. So he should be considered like a meishva aveda, because he's saying, in essence, that the other half is yours. V'li pater, and he should be pater from a shvua. Kamash Mala, and then no, the Herumi Kararim, he could be tricking us over. He thinks, if I say kulashli, I'm going to have to swear. I'll say chetzishli, davi kameisha aveda vi pater. And therefore, there would be a chiddush in Mekach Memkar in this case. So the Gemara is stuck, and the Gemara is saying, where did Rami Bar Chama see in our Mishnah a place to learn Magbiyah Metziah L'Chaveira? Continues the Gemara, Lamiha must be from here. Why do we this case? It's just an application of the prior. Elami Mishnah Yisera, the extra case Shmamina. Hamagbiyah Metziah L'Chaveira Kana Chaveira. Says the Gemara, maybe this case in the Seif has its own unique chiddush. That riding an animal, two people come and riding an animal to Bezin, that's considered a kinyan. Ela mi Seif, it must be the end of the Mishnah. If they admit there's Eidim, they slow that a shvua. B'mai. 3 lines to the bottom, what's the case? Even Mekach Memkar, we're talking about buying and selling. What's the chiddush? Of course. Elalav Metziah. that what they might the other half is other guy, or they're Eidim that it belongs to both of them. And what's the Chiddush? That's the Chiddush of the end of the Mishnah, that if two people pick it up and each one admits the other half is other guys, there's a kinyan to the other guy from the fact that he picked it up for him. Rav will tell you, there's no raya for that case. Why? Because in that case, each one is being kind of for themselves, therefore they can be kind of for the other guy. We pick it up in the very bottom of Chesam and off the last line, the final case in the Mishnah. Amar Rav Yosef, Amar Li Rav Yehuda. Says Rav Yosef, Rav Yehuda said to me as we turn over to Chesam and base, Shema asked me, no, we learn from this case of two people riding an animal, Damar Shmuel, Amar Shmuel, Tarti. There's two Chadushim in this case. Said Mar Shmuel said Rav Yehuda to Rav Yosef that Mar Shmuel told him, meaning Rav Yehuda, that there's two Chadushim in this case of Shnayim Roichvin. Says the Gemara, number one, Roichavu Manik, that if one guy's riding and one guy's leading, Chad Kani, Chad Loi Kani, only one has the kinyan, V'lo Yadana, and I don't know, hey, Minayu. So the Chiddush was that if we said in the Mishnah, Shnayim Roichlin, they're both riding. But what if only one was riding and one was leading the animal? I guess he was holding the reins and he was leading the animal. Says the Gemara, Chada Kani, one would have a kinyan, and Chada Loi Kani, and one would not have a kinyan. Says the Gemara, V'lo Yadana, but I do not know, says Rav Yehuda, quoting from Amar Shmuel, which? Is the guy riding the one koinah, or is the guy leading the one koinah? Says the Gemara, Hechidami, what's going on over here? 3 lines down, Chesam and Beis. If you're talking about that, one guy just comes into Bezin leading an animal, one guy's just riding an animal. What's going on here? Is there anyone that says if you lead an animal, you're manig, you're not koinah? Of course you are. How else is the way to be koinah an animal? By leading it. Must be riding it. Rather, says the Gemara, what must the Chiddush be? Rav Yehuda was not sure when Rav Yehuda said over from our Shmuel, and he said, Lo Yadana, he doesn't know the din. What's that referring to? Rachav b'makayim manig. That when someone's riding it, and there's also someone leading the animal. So what's the shayla? This was the shayla that Rav Yehuda saying over. My Rachev Adif is leading it better. Like you're holding part of the animal, you're holding the reins at least. Or maybe riding it is better. Why? Because you're causing it to move. So says the Gemara, that is the shayla. Before I know it's getting late, but let's just take a moment to see Rashi. Rashi says, Al Rachav b'makei manik. Shneim ba'am lefaneinu. 2 people come in front of us. Al Rachav zeh manik. One is riding, one is leading. Zeh Amar Kula Shali, Zeh Amar Kula Shali. And on this case, Amar Shmuel, Chad Kani, one has a kid in Umibai Lil Rav Yehuda, and Rav Yehuda was not sure. Heichel Desnayu L'Taravayu, Hey Yadev, Rachav Adev, Tatavas Beis holding it. V'chei Amrina Mashiach Kakani, Heichel Deleka Rachav, Avbakam Rachav Loi, Odem Amani Gadev. Why? That was the shayla that Rav Yehuda said over from our Shmuel. Amar Rav Yosef, Amar Li Rav Yehuda. So Rav Yosef says, Rav Yehuda himself trying to answer the shayla next and on. Let's see. Titinan, we learned in a Mishnah. Hamanik Soifig Abayim. If there's animals of Kalayim, 2 different breeds of animals, and someone leads them, he receives a malchus for being over Kalayim. And if these Kalayim animals are leading a wagon, so he who sits in the wagon as well, Soifig Abayim gets a malchus. Rameir Poiter as a Yeshe Bekaroin. Rameir says one sitting in the wagon is Potter. Now, what is the raya from here? Umede'epach Shmuel v'tani. Shmuel switched around the Tanakam and Rameir, and he learned the opposite. What must Shmuel have held from the fact that he flipped around the name and made the Chachamim the one that held that he was writing his pater? Must be the Chachamim, and that's what Mar Shmuel is going to hold that your pater, that riding itself, sitting in the wagon, is not a kinyan, and that was the raya that if one guy is riding and one guy is leading it, the one that's riding it would not be chayiv. And that was Rav Yehuda's raya proving that which would be the din by Rachav and Manik. Amrle Abaye Rav Yosef. So Abaye said to Rav Yosef, this isn't so pashit. We're about 15 lines down. The first one line is Abaye. Hazin and Sagian Amrilan. But there were times that you taught us, Nachzi Anan, let's see. V'loy Amrilan, Mishmei Rav Yehuda. And you did not say it in the name of Rav Yehuda. So Abaye said to Rav Yosef, the previous din that just was proved, you sometimes taught it to us, but not b'shem Rav Yehuda. So Amar Lei, so Rav Yosef said to Abaye, Ivra, it's true that Rav Yehuda said this proof. Udachrina Nami, and I remember Damrlei, and I remember that I responded to him, Echli Pashit, Ma Rachav Mi Yosef. I said to Rav Yehuda, what's the raya? Rachav and Yosef. It's not exactly the same, says Rav Yosef. Yosef, like toughest b'misira. When you're sitting in the caravan, when you're sitting in a wagon behind the animals, you're not holding onto the misira, the bridle, the reins. But Rachav, when you're sitting on top of the animals, you are toughest b'misira. So there should be no raya. V'amar li, and Rav Yehuda said, Rav Ushmuel da'amri tervayu. Rav Ushmuel will say, Moisira loy kana. The holding of the reins, the holding of the bridle of the animal is not a kinyan. And therefore, that is why Rabbi Yehuda felt that there is a raya from Yosef, because it will be a comparable case. We finish off today with another Lashon Ika Diamri, 15 lines to the bottom. The first one line is Diamri, Amar Leah, Bailer Rav Yosef, Echa Bashemar, Rachav mi Yosef. How can you bring a raya from Yosef? Yosef like Tavs Mesira, Rachav Tavs Mesira. Amar Le, Rav Yosef respond, Achi Tani Idi, Mesira like Kani. There's no kidding from Mesira, and therefore there is no problem. Second lashon proving the same point. We're going to stop over here. We'll pick it up from Rav Chalbai, who's going to continue discussing Mesira, giving over, taking hold of the reins, the bridle of the animal, B'siyata Dishmaya.